James and John had no idea what they were asking for. When we read the first reading from Isaiah, which is such a beautiful, compassionate reading, we hear what we call the suffering servant talked about. The one who will give his life for many and offer his life for the salvation of others. When that was written, it was after the fact. In other words, Isaiah is proposing that, and we don't know the answer, the people of Israel, one person, or a great prophet is the one he's talking about. But it happened after the fact. Now, he looks at the people of Israel, he looks at their bondage, he looks at their slavery, he looks at their pains, and he's telling them, stick to it, because the one who experiences all this will be rewarded. So he's like preparing us, the Christians, to look forward by looking backwards into the people of Israel. So the character, again, we don't know if the person we call suffering servant means all of Israel, one person, or a specific person, but that's all right. It doesn't really matter, because imagine the joy of Matthew, Mark, and Luke when they experienced Jesus and it came their time to write about Jesus in the Gospels. When they went back into the Old Testament and looked at all the pages, they must have been so ecstatic when they read this reading and the rest of Isaiah and said to themselves, I got the answer. He's talking about Jesus. He didn't know he was talking about Jesus, because that's God's insight, but he's talking about Jesus. Jesus is the one who bears our infirmity. Jesus is the one who carries our crosses. Jesus is the one who gives his life for us. And they wove that into the Gospels, fulfillment of the Old Testament. So the bottom line is, Jesus is that person, but he's not like the victorious king, like the apostles said, when you come into your glory. He's the suffering servant. And through his suffering, achieves accomplishments. Now, any of us know that. If you put your time in, whether it's a job, whether it's a parent, whether it's school or employment, you put your time in, it's not going to be easy. They say, and it does apply to me, I know that, they say if you enjoy what you do, it's never a job. I love what I do. As a priest and as a family therapist, and as an artist, I love all of that. The gifts that God has given me, I do, and I enjoy doing them. But they're time-consuming. And for the rest of us, the people say, if you enjoy what you're doing, it's not a job. Well, we as Christians, hate to say it, don't always enjoy being a Christian. Today we're celebrating Grandpa's death a year ago. And that was sad, but yet the family is here in their suffering toward resurrection, toward Jesus Christ, saying the suffering is paying off because we believe that he rests with God, and we are getting consolation by being here today. Yes, the pain is still there. It never goes away when you lose someone you love. And that's the crux of the mystery of being a Christian. Okay, so Peter and the apostles are walking along, and Jesus sees two of the brothers, James and John, and they come up to Jesus and says, Jesus, I want to ask you a favor. And they were nice guys, and this is another version of the same story. Another version, the other gospel, is that the mother of James and John comes up to Jesus, basically asking the same question. So it must have made an impression on the evangelists for them to record it in two different ways. When you come into your glory, may I sit on one side and my brother sit on the other side? Jesus says, you don't know what you're asking. Can you drink the cup that I'm... Oh, yeah. Can you baptize into the baptism? Yeah. Well, they had no idea what they're saying yeah to. Saying yeah is saying yes to Jesus and his way of living life, which is the cross and the glory. So they're really asking to sit next to Jesus in a hot seat, basically. When you come into your glory, I want to sit in the hot seat right next to you. No one would say that. No one would say, I want to sit where you sit and suffer like you suffer. No, they wouldn't have said that. Time proves itself that that's exactly what happened, but they wouldn't have said that. They wouldn't have thought it. They're talking about glory. They're talking about king. They're talking about, white horse conquering the Romans. And they're not picturing the truth of the mystery. So the mystery of Jesus is woven into today's scripture, and it's woven into Isaiah. That through suffering, not that we're not masochists, but through suffering and an attitude toward suffering, we get closer to God. When we're on a goal, a trajectory of life, whether it's romance, whether it's occupation, whether it's our family prayers, as we look to the goal, there's going to be suffering along the way because we're human. One of the patrons of our parish, Mother Cabrini, experienced that, and I thought that would be a good example to use today. Here is a woman, she founded the Missionary Sisters of the Sacred Heart, and she was deathly afraid of water. I mean, you have to say maybe God has a sense of humor. And her first mission was across the seas to come to the United States. That was her mission. And she took the boat ride across the seas and got sick almost every day. She was deathly afraid of water. And in the course of her ministry, traveled 26 times from the Americas to Europe, across the sea. This is a woman who had a lot of energy and a lot of vision. I mean, who would not support a woman who was tiny, but had a lot of spark, and says, I want to found orphanages, schools, hospitals for poor immigrants? Who would not say, oh, go for it, girl? No, that support wasn't there. People didn't say, oh, here comes Francesca Cabrini. Let's give her support that she needs to help the poor. She fought for it. She was a tiger. And with her mission in mind of accomplishing schools and orphanages, and which she did from literally coast to coast, from New Jersey and New York, way over to California, Chicago, and all throughout the country. 26 missions. And south, she went south to Costa Rica and Panama. More missions. Orphanages, hospitals, schools. Her joy was to found these places, to establish them. That was her joy. That was her goal. But right along the way, she had a cross. She suffered. Physically, she suffered because she had an illness from childhood that she eventually died with at only 67 years old in Chicago. But she never let her illness, her declining health, or the challenges, the economic and social challenges, defer her ministry. She had a focus. The suffering came with it. Did she say, oh, I'm going to suffer, yay for you? No, nobody says that. You have to be a nut to do that. You have to be a masochist to say that. But if we say we follow Jesus Christ, we know we're going to suffer. Good, love, charity costs a great deal. And if we, who are Christians, follow Jesus' example, we're going to suffer a great deal with him. But it doesn't deter us. It should give us more strength. Because if we took to the scriptures, we realize, oh, it was already planned that way. We as human beings, to do good God's goodwill are going to have to suffer. We're going to pay a price. And Mother Cabrini, again, never said, oh, we don't have the money for this. I'll get the money. I mean, she's like Italian-American. She's the first, as you know, first Italian-American saint. So she's the first naturalized American saint, canonized in 48, I think. But she never let her accent, she never let her Italian education get in the way. She learned the ways of the world. She learned the ways of dealing with entrepreneurs in New York. She learned the way to go to philanthropists and get money for her charity. Not for her, for her charity. But she accumulated so much money, she lands in, say, Santa Fe, and it happened in a lot of places. Santa Fe, and she searches around, and she finds an area, geographic area, and she says, okay, I'm going to buy this. And she writes a check. Not her money, the money that was given to her because of her charity and her focus and her ministry. God always provides. We hear that in all the saints. We hear that for even Mother Teresa of Calcutta, more contemporary to us. She went ahead and started her mission with nothing. And people would say, well, wait, how are you going to do this? You have no money. God will provide. I mean, it's funny. To say that sounds like a cocktail napkin saying, or a Chinese cookie, the little fortunes. God will provide. But she meant it. And God did. And God does. As long as we have the focus, as long as we have the idea of accomplishing good. And not everything we do is necessarily Catholic charity. Doing good is the bottom line. And we put on top of that our mission as Catholics, to do good as Catholics, to vote correctly as Catholics, to support the correct political person or philosophy as Catholics, to support the charities that the Church sponsors. All of them cost you something. If not time, it costs you money. If not money, it costs you anxiety. But we don't give up. God is with us. And if the mission that we're on is Jesus' mission, we have the energy to do it and to go forward. And just to close, just so we know who we are following, the letter to the Hebrews is a great letter. It's short. Read it. Go home, read it. Letters to the Hebrews. Written after Jesus, of course, by a follower that's called the pastor. We don't know who the author is, but it got into the scriptures because it was so beautiful, and it summarizes Jesus' role in the Old and New Testament. So who is this guy that we're following? The priest who passed through the heavens, Jesus, Son of God. What is the priest? The author is writing to Hebrews, Jews. And they knew that the priest, once a year, passed through the Holy of Holies in the temple and made offerings to God alone beyond the veil of the temple. And when he went into the temple, he wore a phylactery, and it had 12 stones representing the 12 tribes of Israel. So when he, the priest, the high priest of the year, was offering prayers to God, he was doing it on behalf of all of the people. The author of Hebrews says, we have the high priest, Jesus, and he passed through the veils of death and is now in the Holy of Holies, the authentic Holy of Holies. He's in the presence of the Creator. And with him, all of us, not the 12 tribes, all of us, because he came for all people. Is it worth it? Is it worth holding on to our values? I think so. I think so. Will it always feel good? No. No. Will it be challenging? Yes. But to know, as you and I are walking on our journey of life, that Jesus is with us, Like right here, hand on our shoulder. He's with us. What strength, what hope, what glory we have while here on earth. While here on earth. And one day, when time comes, in the glory of heaven.